Hey, Steve Magnante here from the Junkyard Crawl. You guys probably all know that for the last 18 years, I also do the Barrett-Jackson collector car auctions in Scottsdale, Las Vegas, Palm Beach, Florida, and Reno. Well, for the next few days, I'm going to be at the Las Vegas auction, and I won't be able to be in the junkyard to make fresh videos. So instead, what I'm going to give you is for 6 days in a row, 15-minute segments of the 90-minute video, How to Build Altered Wheelbase Funny Cars. Now, this is a DVD I used to sell for $19.95. I made it back in 2007, but it still holds water today. You can actually watch a 63 Dodge Dart turn into a funny car. There's also race footage from the Wilshire Shaker. There's also a Ford Fairmont altered wheelbase car. So again, for 6 days, we'll have 15-minute episodes of how to build an altered wheelbase funny cars running from front to back. And when I get back from Barrett-Jackson, we'll get right back to the junkyard. But in the meantime, enjoy how to build altered wheelbase cars starting right now. We call this place the Funny Farm because it's actually my backyard. And yes, you could build this car in your backyard too. One thing you're going to hear as we do this video is an awful lot of construction sounds. Yeah, what do you know? They're actually building new houses right next door to my house. So ignore the bulldozers and the beepers and the dump trucks. I'm going to speak loud and clear and show you what you need to do. First thing, of course, is putting your car on a level, flat surface. Although we're working in a backyard, we don't want to pretend that you can do this job on grass or on the beach because the car won't sit level and you'll have a disastrous outcome. So what we have here is a cement pad that used to be where I had a swimming pool. It's long gone. You can also do this job on your driveway, any place that's flat and solid. Now the first thing to do is to support the car on jack stands at the front, the middle, and the rear. The reason for this is because the car is going to be undergoing pretty drastic surgery as we remove the rear suspension. We don't want the body to settle or sag as we cut it apart. Because the car is going to be put through a pretty severe surgery, we have to support the vehicle from the front all the way to the back. At the front of the car, we have some heavy-duty jack stands that are placed right on the frame rails. These are rigid places that won't move. We don't want to support the car from the front suspension because then, of course, the car can shift and move up and down. We don't want that at all. The support continues at the middle of the car. We place jack stands here underneath the rockers. Now we want the middle of the car supported because we're going to be cutting the rear floor and suspension and frame away from the body and rolling it forward. We don't want this car to sag while it's in surgery. At the back of the car, the support continues with a set of jack stands placed under the quarter panels. This will prevent them from sagging or moving once again when the rear suspension is rolled forward. Now, the thing to keep in mind is the car needs to be supported up off the ground so that the rear tires are just barely in contact with the surface. We don't want any suspension load. We want the rear axle to actually drop. That way, it won't bind or spring when we actually separate it. So when we roll this forward, everything docks up and stays aligned. The most important thing, however, is to make sure the car is truly horizontal. And while you might think it's possible, never trust the chrome molding on the side of a car to be horizontal. What you can do is use a bubble level, and right here, I found this to be the one place on most every car that truly is horizontal. Keep jacking and adjusting the car so that the bubble level truly is level and horizontal. That way the car and the surgery will come out the way they need to. A couple of tips include the use of taller tires to help the rear suspension hang and just barely make contact. Why do I say this? Well, our Dart originally came with 13-inch rims and short tires. Even with the shortest jack stands, the rear tire actually was above the surface. That's not good. So what I did is I borrowed a set of 14-inch rims with these tires that are taller so that we can actually adjust our jack stands and have just a small amount of contact between the tire and the surface. And when it comes to jack stands, try to find jack stands with a large range of adjustability. Generally speaking, the more teeth, the better. Because if you have jack stands with very few teeth, it'll give you 1 or 1.5 inch increments in your height. This one here goes half-inch increments, which really makes it easier to adjust the car so it's truly level and horizontal. And when you can't get it just right, use wooden shims between the body and the jack stand to make sure the car truly is horizontal. I keep hammering that point, but it's very important to a good outcome. It's time to introduce Dale Snow. He's a master fabricator. He's the guy who's going to be doing most of the grunt work on this job. Now, Dale, the alteration of our wheelbase involves a lot of separating and a lot of joining of metal. What's the best way to separate metal?
Probably, Steve, 2 ways. One is plasma cutter, down here at the bottom. Plasma cutter is a great tool for everybody to use because we call it the butter knife because it'll just slice and dice through just about anything. Doesn't leave a big wide path, doesn't distort the metal. not everybody has a plasma cutter. A lot of people have an oxygen and acetylene gas setup. This will work. It makes a pretty big path wherever it goes. You can use it. You got to be careful with it, especially when you're working on body panels. Another device we use is a Sawzall. Sawzall is a great device to use. Again, you got to be careful though on body panels because it'll vibrate. If anybody's used these before, they know when you get caught in the metal and it starts shaking it around.
Now, as far as once you've separated the metal, joining the metal back together again, or welding, what are the best tools for that?
MIG welder, can't beat it. We have just a standard 110 volt Millard model. This thing works great. It'll do everything we want it to do. Most people who do anything like this in their shop will have a basic MIG welder. It works great. You can turn it down to such a low heat range that you can put the panels together with very little distortion, and you can also turn it up to a larger heat range where you can weld some of the bigger metal together. Works great.
What is the total cost of this equipment, the stuff we're going to be using? Under $2,000 bucks?
Yeah, it'd be rough. Probably the biggest hit's the plasma cutter. Plasma cutter is going to run about $1,000. Standard MIG welder, similar to this model, $500 maybe. Acetylene gas setup, probably about $300. Under $2,000.
We'll break the bank, and if you decide to do more than one of these cars, this stuff pays for itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once you start using it, you'll see how really basic it is. Once you get familiar with the tools.
Let's start chopping metal.
There's quite a bit of Bondo in this panel, but you know what? That's nothing to be said about. I mean, we're going to come across that stuff anyway, so. And we're committed, might as well just keep on going through it.
This is one of the hidden pitfalls. So this is a part of the car. This is going to have to be welded to that right there. Now, there's some plastic body filler in this car. Now, it looks like a very straight car, and it is. There's no rust, but accident damage has been filled with plastic. Well, we're just going to have to work with this. What we'll do is we'll knock the Bondo out of there and weld it together. Just have to do what we have to do.
Here comes a cloud of dust.
There it is. While Dale is outside making a racket, we're going to play a little bit of hooky here in the house. Now, there's a whole group of people that sociologists like to call rejuveniles. Basically, what we are is fully grown adults who still collect toys and things we love from our childhood. And in my case, early funny car model kits are one of my favorite things. Here are some of the best ones. This one here is a Johan 1966 Plymouth Fury. Now, on the box art, we see a delicious picture of the Sox and Martin team car. I know, you're going to say, hold on, Sox and Martin never ran a full-size Fury, and you're right. In 1966, Sox and Martin was running an altered wheelbase Barracuda. So I don't know what the Johan artists were thinking, but it's still a cool model kit. AMT released the Funny Hugger 2 about 1969, and I remember being about a 6-year-old kid and just loving this model. And beyond that, we have the Jungle Jim flip-top car from 1970 and a half. It's a Revell model. Of course, we all know that real funny cars have opening doors, but these flip-top cars are still pretty cool. Now, when it comes to new model kits for us rejuveniles, basically, MPC has re-released the Hearst Hemi under glass. They've re-released it twice in the last year. Why? Well, the first go-around has a picture of a 1969 Barracuda fastback. Well, guess what? The model kit inside represents a 1966 model. Big difference. They made a mistake. Well, they updated the box art about 4 months ago, showing a 1965 Barracuda on the box art, which is closer than the 66 that's inside. Further, the Model King is re-releasing a lot of the old models. This one here is a 65 Ford Falcon AFX. Now, this was originally released as Phil Bonner's Daddy Warbucks car. It's kind of a crude little model, but again, the Model King is taking these old kits and basically applying new model graphics to them. Now, this one here is the Wild Child, a Canadian funny car, a real car. Of course, Revell is also in on the game. This is a re-release of the Miss Deal funny car from about 1968. Once a very rare model kit. You probably paid $200 for this. Well, now you can get them for about $20. They're reproduced, re-released. Now, the only thing with this one, of course, we know that an altered wheelbase Studebaker flip-top funny car, nobody ran one of these back in the day, but it's still a cool model kit. More re-releases from the Model King include this 63 Tempest funny car. Essentially, it's an Arnie Beswick knockoff from the 60s. And the Rat Packer 63 Chevy Nova altered wheelbase car. I love these old kits. Now, I don't have a whole lot of time these days to be painting models, but when I do have time, I take them to a whole nother level. And that level includes full paint and detailing. This is one of the very first altered wheelbase model cars I ever made. This was done about 1979, and it's basically a tribute to the Ram Chargers with a blown Hemi, fully altered wheelbase. It's kind of crude. I mean, the graphics on the side of this thing, this is long before Fred Cady started making Ram Charger decals, but these are actually Ram Charger stickers or labels I took out of Hot Rod magazine. I trimmed them out of advertisements and glued them on the side of the car. It's pretty crude, but it was the best I could do. Moving up, my infatuation with altered wheelbase cars went all the way to this Plymouth Superbird. Now, I know that Richard Petty never had an altered wheelbase Superbird, but in 1964 and 5, he did have the 43 Junior altered wheelbase Hemi Barracuda match racer. Kind of an infamous car, but this Superbird is sort of a tribute and sort of a demonstration that the altered wheelbase effects can really make a dramatic impact on just about any model. But I used to take these cars to contests, and quite often what would happen is the judges wouldn't notice the wheelbase alteration surgery. So I built this half and half car, which basically was designed to make it so you couldn't miss the fact that it is altered on one side, like the Ram Chargers 64 type car, but on this side, it's Grandpa's 383 car. The work continues underneath. There's sort of a half and half drive line. We've got a Dana 60 in the back on one side, an 8 3/4 on the other. Blown fuel or injected fuel, Hemi on this side, 383 4-speed on that side, you know, the dual exhaust system, and then of course the zoomies. And it was a thing where this car was shown to a few judges at some shows, and it was cool, but they still didn't seem to get it. Work here, doesn't matter, I like it. And of course, after taking some time off from model building, these cars here go back to the mid-80s. About 10 years ago, I started building again seriously, and sort of just spending a lot more time on them. This here is the Roby Ford. It's a fictitious Ford Fairlane funny car. It's got the overhead cam 427, Hillborn fuel injection, and a fully altered wheelbase. Now on this car here, what I did is basically stretch the wheel opening, sort of as a tribute to Dino Don Nicholson's 1965 Mercury Comet. Underneath, of course, C6 automatic with a transmission blanket, deep pan, full Thunderbolt rear suspension. And it's sort of set up so the left front corner is coming off the line. It's like launching hard. But I took that theme a little further with the Palomino, which is a 66 Chevelle. Sorry, make that a 67 Chevelle. Now this is probably my favorite altered wheelbase funny car that I've built so far. This one here is a blown fuel car, launching off the line hard. Left front tires dangle in the air. The driver's wearing his fire suit. He's in the middle of the car. And this kind of represents the very last days of the door slammer steel shell funny car before the flip-top thing really came on strong. Well, okay, we've probably screwed off long enough. We better get back to the pad and see if Dale needs some help.